evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, October 7th, 2024 at 7 p.m. and we are in regular session tonight. Before we begin our regular session, however, we have a scheduled public hearing. You may see a clipboard going around for attendance at this public hearing. Thank you, David. If you run out of lines on the front, simply turn it over and place your name on the back. Thank you. The public hearing tonight is to discuss a recommendation from the Athens City Planning Commission to amend the city's zoning code schedule of bulk controls, front yard setback, and to remove the ground story height of terraces, steps, or stoops. And this is Ordinance 88-24, which is up for third reading tonight. I want to start the public hearing by reading into the record a message from a local citizen who was unable to be here this evening. Mr. Rob Delatch of 124 Morris Avenue, City of Athens. Rob writes, I am writing to City Council to submit my support for the recommendation of the City Planning Commission to amend the city's zoning code schedule of bulk controls, front yard setback, and to remove the ground story height of terraces, steps, or stoops. The changes to City Code as recommended by the Planning Commission are much needed to allow existing property owners to build additions, porches, and other property enhancing amenities in the City of Athens. In addition, the city has a well-known housing shortage, especially for family-type residences. This proposal will also make it easier for infill development in our residential zones that will encourage gentle densification to provide much-needed additional housing. This proposal is an excellent, common-sense first step toward helping to address the housing shortage in Athens, and I encourage City Council to adopt the proposed changes to the city zoning code. That is the only communication that I received via email. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this issue during the public hearing? Okay, thank you very much for attending the public hearing on bulk controls. We now move to although it is a regular session tonight, we are holding a meeting of the Committee of the Whole to consider a application for a street closure on West Union Street between Court and Congress that has come from Sarah Koya Bryant of Cool Digs. The committee, City Council, has received the information submitted to the city for this request, and I turn it over to the committee to share your thoughts on this proposal. Member Swank?
Yes. Member Spelness, representing the First Ward, but really representing the entire city, was unable to be here tonight. Her plane literally, not her personal plane, but her plane she's on, literally just landed in Columbus and doesn't need a speeding ticket, so she won't be here tonight. So she asked me to kind of give an overview of what we're considering this evening. For many, as I understand it, and we just found out about this as a council last week, and I visited the business in question. In fact, I visited all the businesses in question, or all the businesses in that area multiple times over the last week to 10 days. And for many years, I believe back to 2011 or 13, I'm not sure my exact dates, Cool Digs has had an annual gym show down at their place on the Far East Side. And this year, the owners and workers decided, let's move it uptown. Let's get it over on Union Street in front of our business, which is currently blocked. And let's continue this tradition. This brings people into the city. We talk about being business friendly and bringing people into the city for various opportunities. And interestingly enough, this is a thing that's actually an event that's going to take place and attract people that doesn't require alcohol. And for families, I think that's a pleasant change, and I would applaud the owner for that. But you can't have anything on the street, in my opinion, unless you have music, and there will be music. Bandstand will be set up. Guess that would be the west end of Union Street, kind of down towards BW3s, or for those of you who've been around a long time, where Frisch's Big Boy used to be, and that goes way back. I've spoken with Sarah Koya several times via text, also when she was out of town at a trade show, to get the ins and outs of this. I personally think this is a good thing for the city. It's nice to diversify the entertainment in the city. Not only will this be entertainment, but we'll also bring people to that part of Court Street on what is rather quiet weekend. There are no home football games, at least for the team that matters here, and get some people uptown and hopefully get a nice, beautiful day like we have today. Even though it's committee of the whole, I'll turn it over to members of council, and then I think you probably, some of you, I know I will, have some questions for the proprietor for more specific details and the benefit of this, not only for the business, but also for the city of Athens.
I do have a question. May I address the owner?
Is that okay, Sarah Koya?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone.
Hi, Sarah.
What can I answer for you, Beth?
I also like what we have learned so far about this event. It sounds like it will be a nice diversification of the uptown offerings. But I'm wondering if there's going to be a band. Could you just tell us a little more about the whole plan for this event?
Sure. The band, it's our house band, but it's made up of John Bursler, who is a well-known Columbus musician, Brian Alton, Travis Van Sickle. John will bring a accompanying band with him. Phil Clark, he is a jazz ensemble piano player. They come to all of our gem shows. As Alan knows, anybody that lives on the east side has heard our music. So we get our rocks out. We have some of our vendors come, so we'll have vendors in the road, and we will have a gem show uptown.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.
One thing I failed to mention, they will also have food trucks, so there will be
Oh,
yeah,
nourishment
we have one
available.
Food truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And this, sorry, Member Reisner?
What's the reason for the move? Why change location?
Well, you know, we've seen a lot of people having events uptown this summer, and it seemed kind of fun. We've seen 4 different occasions where the road in front of our shop was shut down. Only one of them was on the city list of approved road closures, but it seemed like Andy Cheeky was just able to shut the road down. So I let him know in July, on July 9th by email, that we wanted to do this. And then he really didn't get back to me. He's not very great at getting back to me, but I reminded him again in September that we wanted to do this. And he said, oh, well, Dora's over. I said, well, that's okay. We don't want to drink in the road. We're just trying to have music and get our rocks out. I've heard from some of the other citizens. Andrea Reich went to one of the uptown road closures that Andy Cheeky approved, and she couldn't see my business because of all of the tents that were blocking my business, and she didn't even realize that I had a business uptown. So we want to just showcase our business uptown. The students are back, so that'll be great. They'll all know that we're there. That's what we're trying to do. And, you know, I'm not trying to play favorites. I know that a road closure is kind of a big deal, but I would remind you that you guys did close the road earlier in the year for Tony's Bar also, just for a private person to close the road. So, any other questions?
No?
I'll just share for the committee that this is on Saturday, October 19th. And also that this summer, Mr. Cheeky was on paternity leave, so there may have been some issues with communication with Mr. Cheeky, but we are now considering this. So are there any other questions from the committee?
Not a question, but a comment.
Please.
As President Crowell mentioned, this would be October the 19th, which is a week from Saturday. What this will require is, if you look at the agenda, it will be listed as an item for first reading. And to get this passed, we would need to suspend the rules. We do have the requisite number of people here to do that. And if we suspend the rules, then we could go ahead and vote on it so they could proceed with their the project. I have to say, that I think this is well-deserved. Every city likes to move forward, and every city needs to, from time to time, do infrastructure projects. The first big one we had here most recently was out on Stimson Avenue, and it looks nice. I do worry about people falling into those pits along the road there, but it does look nice. Unfortunately, we lost two businesses down on Stimson Avenue, the Chinese restaurant, and the pharmacy. Everyone's aware of the big project we have it on Union Street, which when it's all said and done is going to look nice, it's going to be pedestrian friendly, and it's going to be safe. But it has had a very, very devastating effect on some businesses. I know one business on Wednesdays that does quite well, but their business on Wednesdays is down 50%. I know the guy down there is losing $111 a day. On Union Street, uptown, we now have this project. And Ryan, if you would flip up that slide, you want to get to Cool Digs, that's what you got to get through. And I think not only is this gym show something fun and something new for a lot of people, but it's a way for the city to recognize that we have a difficult situation here. It has had an impact on not only the gemstone business, but the florist next door, who's now getting no pickup or walk-in traffic. The guy told me, and this is kind of sad, thank goodness for weddings and funerals.
Yeah.
So I think this is a gesture the city council could show, and the administration could also join with us on this, to show we recognize we've created a situation here, a situation we need, because that Lostro building is going to be much better occupied, employing people, and paying taxes, than just sitting there for another year or two or three. So not only is I'm advocating this as a fun thing, but as a way to help out businesses that certainly could use a little help, because we certainly can't write a check, but this is a way that we can energize the community and provide an opportunity for fun and enterprise.
Thank you, Mr. Swank. I'll just remind the audience that we are in a little bit of a special meeting tonight with the public hearing starting and then this committee of the whole. So we have an opportunity to discuss this proposal in front of us, but it will come up again at first reading. As Mr. Swank said, we'll be looking to suspend the rules to pass this tonight so that planning can go forward. So there'll be another opportunity here in I don't know how long, but pretty soon, for council members to ask more questions or comments and then have a chance to vote on this. Currently under the committee, are there any other questions or comments from council members? City administration, would you like to comment on it?
I would, and I need to be crystal clear with council on this one, and those of you who are here tonight. For this, we are making an exception. We are typically putting together the slate of events where promoters are coming to city council in January, to where we put before council a slate of all the events moving forward in time. And so policy in 2025 is going to be that you show up and come to the meetings that we have to put that calendar of events together. And if you don't show for whatever reason, next year, no exceptions will be made for bringing anything to council moving forward in time. We've been working very hard on getting an entire slate to council. We've had some new events this past year that came up. We made an exception. In 2025, that will not be the case. You come when we're putting together that slate of events. The other thing that we will not be doing beyond tonight is moving forward in time. It makes no sense to do in 2025 and beyond to have an event that is basically hosted by one individual or one company. It, like everything else that happens throughout the summer and throughout the year with events on Court Street, is that the Athens Community Arts and Music Fest is a perfect example. That is an event where a lot of people who have potentially artistic products like your gems and your stones to be a part of that event moving forward in time. So I'm just informing council as to how we're going to be conducting things, which is what we've been doing in the past. We've had to make an exception here or there, but in 2025 and moving forward, it is going to be, that slate of events is the events in which council is being asked to close down the street for the use of the public right-of-way for said events, whatever those events might be. It's saving council time, it's saving my administration time in terms of the amount of people power that goes into putting out the roadblock, the barricades, making sure the meters are bagged and so on and so forth. So just letting council know and letting anybody else who's watching tonight know that for events in 2025, you need to come to the city building. January is when we start putting that calendar together, and we'll get to council all of the street closings all in one single piece of legislation.
I think that's probably what your ordinance suggests. The ordinance about street closures in Dora suggests that every one of those should be approved by council. And yet Andrew Cheeky, upon returning from his maternity leave in early June, approved not one, not two, but 3 extra road closures this summer, all in front of my shop, that were not approved by council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other elected officials, would you like to, anybody else from the public like to comment on this street closure? Okay, thanks for being here, Sarah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your consideration.
Absolutely. Okay, so that finalizes our committee of the whole, and we will start our regular session now. I'd like to start by acknowledging that here in Athens County, we live and work on land initially settled and developed by earlier people, particularly the Shawnee and the Osage, and those identified through cultures commonly known as the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient. This acknowledgement reminds us of the importance of honoring history, people, and the planet as we work to improve the city's legacy. Our first order of business is to establish quorum. 6 of 7 council members are present this evening, and we have quorum. The next item of business is disposition of minutes for the regular session of council held on September 16th, 2024. May I have a motion for the approval of these minutes?
So moved. Seconded.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The minutes have been approved. We now have communications. Do any council members have communications they'd like to share? Member Swank?
Very, very good news. First full week of October is Fire Prevention Week. And one of our local businesses, Lowe's, has agreed and communicated to me that they are going to donate 350 smoke detectors to be used in private residence and apartments. And Chief Reimer is working with them on the details of that. The distribution may begin as early as this Saturday at an event they're trying to put together. But I think that's a nice gesture from one of our major employers, and it'd be nice to put 350 of those in apartments and houses in the city of Athens.
Any other communications? Mayor, would you like to introduce our esteemed guest?
I would love to. This is my
you.
communication tonight, the only one I have tonight. As council is well aware, and I think a large number of our citizens are aware, that in February I had the great fortune of traveling to Austro-Ukraine, which is our partner city, through a USAID Havela program. And while I was there, I spent a day and a half at the National University Austro Academy, engaging with the university administration, faculty, and with the students to include an hour-and-a-half long discussion in an air raid shelter while I was over at the Austro Academy, which leads me to my guest tonight. We have the honor and privilege of having the soon-to-be new rector for the National University Austro Academy, Edward Bolashov, who is here with us today, and I wanted to give him a few minutes to introduce himself, and if council has any comments or questions that you would like to ask, I'm sure that the good doctor would be more than happy to share that with you. I might add, if I may, that we're of kindred spirits because he too is a psychology professor. And so that's how we hit it off right away. So just to share. He's been working hard at Ohio University in his time here to continue to establish a relationship and to sign an MOU just this morning. Dr. Balashov.
Thank you so much, Mayor Patterson, dear council members, dear guests, citizens. It's my great privilege and pleasure to be here, to be visiting the city of Athens and the Ohio University premises today and yesterday. It seems to me that this Ostrog-Athens partnership have started really well, and it seems to me that it's going to be continued really more intensively, even more intensively in the following years to come, because we have so many matching moments, we have so many common points, as we were discussing with Mayor Patterson. We have so many similarities between the cities themselves and the universities themselves, although we are I am representing a very small university, which is about 3,000 students, but we have so much common in history of our places. We have so many things common in teaching and research and many other things that can be done together. Today, actually, I had a pleasure to meet with the President Gonzalez, and actually we signed a MOU, which I consider to be the first step in this cooperation, which I hope will be fruitful and useful for both universities. We already had a meeting of the student senates today, which is probably like the first step of real cooperation. I had the pleasure to meet the deans of the faculties here, the deans of different schools here, and I see that after coming back I will have a lot of information to be said to my staff, to my university professors, and actually I will make them work hard on fish and fish, because we are giving them the fishing rod, and after that we let them make things up. Everything is on the table, and I see that willingness from Ohio University representatives to start this cooperation, as well as I see so much willingness from the mayor of Athens to continue cooperation, and I hope that this will grow into something bigger in cooperation between Rivne region, the region where my city is located, and the state of Ohio in future. And I hope it's going to be happening. Again, thank you so much, Mayor Patterson, for making this my visit happen, for contacting me with the university. I do believe that the cooperation will be becoming more fruitful and useful for both sides. Thank you so much. It's an honor and pleasure for me to be here today and to start something bigger, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for Rector Balashov? Member Swank.
Many of the folks in this room have lived here all of our lives. I haven't, but 45 years, but many have lived here all their lives. And we sometimes tend to take things for granted. And I'd be remiss. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate that. But what have you liked best about Athens while you've been here?
The mayor?
The question was what, not who.
Touché.
I like the city very much. It reminds me so much about Ostrog, about my hometown with its architecture. The years of the university's establishment are also very close. That you have the oldest university in Ohio, and my university is the oldest one in Ukraine, founded in 1576. Back there, we started printing books. We had so many manuscripts, which you do have here. So that's what I like about Athens, actually. And when we usually come, well, this is not my first visit to the United States, and we usually come to the States and acknowledge a lot of space everywhere, availability of space and this big scale. So like the town, the city of Athens has about the same amount of population, but it's so widespread. Like my town is so small and it's located in such a small territory, but here you have a lot of space, and that's what I like the most, that you do whatever you kind of want to do, this level of democracy that you have here, that you are free to think, to do whatever is not forbidden by law, because democracy is not just about availability of rights, it's about your responsibility as a citizen as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for the rector? Let me just extend our, welcome to you, our warm
Thank you.
welcome. It's honored to have you here, and thank you for your visit.
Thank you so much. And if I could have one more line to just express this feeling of every Ukrainian, that we as a Ukrainian nation are truly thankful, and we appreciate very much every American citizen and the American nation's support and help that you guys are granting us from the very, very beginning of that, that war that is happening in Ukraine nowadays. We truly appreciate the American nation's support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we will continue with reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Eliason? No. Auditor Hecht? No report. Treasurer Thomas? Okay. We will now move on to ordinances for third reading. I will read the titles and introduce the council member introducing the ordinance. Ordinance 84-24 is an ordinance amending the 2024 appropriation ordinance 130-23 and authorizing an interfund transfer, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've discussed 84-24 in committee, and it's been read twice. Essentially, we're moving money around from one fund to another. Let me just read section 2 to remind the council what the amounts are. The auditor is hereby authorized to make the following interfund transfer from East State Fund, TIF Fund 593 to Street Fund 220, amount $74,500. Section 3, the 2024 appropriation is further amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $74,500 to Street Fund 200 to repave the Hocking Adena Bikeway in the TIF area. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 84-24.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Elected officials? Audience members?
I do have one.
Oh, yes, please, Member Clodfelter.
I happened to be walking on the bike path this past weekend, and the part that has been redone looks really good. It's in much better condition, and it's nice to see the city maintaining that asset that we have of the bike path.
Thank you, Member Clodfelter. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 86-24 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an employment agreement with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Local 24031, concerning wages and working conditions, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me remind council that, again, this has been read twice. It's been discussed in committee rather thoroughly, I believe, considering a union contract. So allow me to read section 1. Athens City Council does hereby authorize the mayor to execute an employment agreement with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Local 24003, 1, a copy of which is attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. What it's referring to in this reference is the other 55 pages, which if you like, I'll read, but it's not really necessary, I think. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 86-24.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Elected officials? Audience members? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 87-24 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 21, Subdivision Regulations, Chapters 21.03, Application, Procedure for Subdivision Approval, 21.04, Design and Construction Standards, and 21.10, Hillside Regulations, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
Like the previous two ordinances, 8724 has also been before committee, had 2 readings. And I guess the letter we received today in communications sums it up very well. This will hopefully address some of the housing issues we have here in Athens. The biggest change is lot size within the city. Right now, to build a house on a lot, you need 8,000 square feet, which is rather large, probably larger than 80 to 90% of the existing lots in town. This will reduce that to 4,000, which on the Far East Side alone could potentially open as many as 25 lots for new building. All we need is builders at this point in time. I would move the council approve 8724.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Elected officials? Audience members? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 88-24 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 23, Zoning, Chapter 23.03, General Regulations and Permitted Modifications, Sections 23.03.08C, Yard Regulations, and 23.03.14, Fences, Walls, Terraces, and Stoops, and Table A, Schedule of Bulk Controls, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
8824 goes into even greater detail, the things that come along with the house, such as fences and walls and terraces. This too has come before council and committee and first and second reading. I would move that council pass 8824.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? City administration, elected officials, audience members? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 89-24 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an annexation agreement with the Athens Township trustees for property located east of Cable Lane, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
8924 has also been in committee and read twice. This evening, we have the attorney for the property owner here, Mr. Mott. We have the property owner here, Mr. Snyder, and the individual who's going to build a home at the top of the hill. Do any of you have anything that we need to know? Anything has changed? Any progress? Your opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Councilmember Swank. No particular changes. I just thought council would be interested in hearing that my client has begun receiving interest already in potential buyers who also want to build up there if the annexation is approved and we are able to move it forward through the county.
Very good. This will not be a massive development. In fact, a good portion of it will be maintained as a conservation area. The appropriate easements have been agreed to in case the city needs to do future development. And I believe something came across our desk that the county commissioners has signed as part 1 in a lengthy process of documents and agreements. I would move the council approve 8924 this evening.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions on the Cable Lane annexation? Elected officials, city administration? Yes, Mayor?
I just want to share that this has been a long process for the property owner, even when it was a potential property owner. But, you know, I think that this is such a great use of a significant portion of the city that is not in the city currently, and to create the situation to where it'll be annexed into the city with the intention of having a new home built on the former home site, but opportunity for potentially others in the future. just continues to provide opportunity for us to have more housing stock, which is desperately needed in the city of Athens. So it's exciting that we've gotten to this point tonight. So thank you, council.
Thank you, Mayor. Audience members, any comment on this? I'll just say, Mr. Schneider, thanks for being here during this process. We appreciate your attendance. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 90-24 is an ordinance amending Title VII Traffic Code, Sections 7.02.11, 7.02.17, 7.02.23, 7.03.07, 7.03.07.1, 7.03.25, 7.04.58, and 7.05.31, and repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith. This is introduced by all members of council, and I've asked Member Swank to introduce this.
Over the last year and a half, the city has reviewed our code to bring it into compliance and consistent with the Ohio Revised Code. This particular section addresses traffic considerations. This has been brought before committee, scrutinized in first and second reading, and I would move the council pass 90-24.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Elected officials, city administration, audience members? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 91-24 is an ordinance amending Title 13, General Offenses, Sections 13.02.04, 13.03.01, 13.05.01, 13.05.08, and 13.05.13, and repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith, introduced by all members of council from Mr. Swank.
Like the previous ordinance, this doesn't address traffic, but it addresses general offenses. Again, bringing our code in line with the Ohio Revised Code. It makes it much, much easier on the law director's office if everything lines up. Fed committee, 2 readings. I would move the council approve 91-24.
Seconded?
We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Elected officials, city administration, audience members? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 92-24 is an ordinance amending the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is another appropriation amendment. Let me refresh our memory on exactly what it's going to do. Section 1, the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by decreasing General Fund Mayor 101.101, Transaction Code 500, capital outlay by $4,000 and increasing Transaction Code 300, travel expense by the same amount for the mayoral travel that will be reimbursed by the National League of Cities, and increasing and decreasing the total appropriations by said amount. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 92-24.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Elected officials, city administration, audience? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 93-24 is an ordinance amending ordinances 74-21, 116-22, and 36-24, authorizing Athens Uptown Designated Outdoor Refreshment Area, DORA, hours of operation, introduced by Councilmember Thomas.
Yes, this is just third reading. This just cleans up the language, setting the dates for the DORA season, and is opening it up a little few days earlier to include the Ohio University spring commencement. All the changes are in Section 2. It'll just say, Section 1 of Ordinance 116-22 is hereby amended to read as follows. Hours of operation. The hours of operation for DORA operation of the district are proposed as follows. Season runs the Friday of Ohio University spring commencement weekend through Sunday of the week prior to the beginning of Ohio University fall semester classes. Dates and or the times that it runs will remain the same. Shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law upon passage and approval by the mayor. I move that we pass this ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, there was a second from Ms. Clodfelter. City administration, elected officials, audience members. Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We now have one ordinance for second reading. I will read the title and then check to see if there are any comments or questions. Ordinance 94-24 is an ordinance amending the 2024 appropriation ordinance 130-23, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Okay, we now move on to ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 95-24 is an ordinance authorizing disposal of equipment and vehicles no longer needed for a municipal purpose. This is introduced by Councilmember Spielness, the chair of our Transportation Committee, and she is not with us this evening. Shall I, Law Director, is it okay if I just introduce this ordinance, or should I pick a council member?
Why don't you pick a council member?
Okay. So let's go to the Transportation Committee. And would Ms. Clodfelter, would you like to introduce this ordinance?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes. So be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, Athens City Council hereby declares the following equipment no longer needed for a municipal purpose. It's a foam box trailer that the fire department has that's just completely outdated. They're not going to use it. They don't think it has much resale value. And so the above, Section 2, the above listed equipment is hereby authorized for donation to the Albany Volunteer Fire Department. That volunteer fire department really needs equipment, and they're willing to try to fix it up. Our department wasn't interested in the amount of time it would take to do that. Section 3, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
Thank you, Member Clodfelter. Any comments or questions from council? Elected officials, city administration, audience members? Okay, thank you. 95-24 has been read for the first time. 96-24 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a buyout agreement for the carport-mounted solar array at the community center, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Crowell. This was last discussed during Committee of the Whole on August 26th. An ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a buyout agreement for the carport-mounted solar array at the community center. Be it ordained by Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to enter into a buyout agreement for the carport-mounted solar array at the community center in substantially the same form as attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $35,000 to Community Center Fund 271 and $200,000 to Capital Improvement Fund 580, and increasing the total appropriations by said amounts. Section 3, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $235,000 for said buyouts as follows: $35,000 from Community Center Fund 271, $200,000 from Capital Improvements Fund 580, and Section 5, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
Thank you, Member McCary. Are there any comments or questions on this ordinance? Yes, Member Clodfelter.
Mayor Patterson, if I may ask, would you be willing to share with the public why it makes sense for the city to buy out the solar panels at the community center?
I'd be more than happy to.
Thank you.
You know, currently the solar array is owned by a third party. It is in its third set of hands. The original builder, over time, sold it to another energy provider who then sold it to someone else. At this point in time, we have been able to to come to an agreement with the current owner, and the price that you're looking at, the $235,000, it's actually going to be slightly less than that. In my conversation with the Service Safety Director earlier today, I think it's around $232,000, but give or take, again, the ordinance reads up to $235,000. That amount was agreed upon because if you look at the current contract, looking forward in time, it would roughly be the equivalent to what the energy generation and revenue that the company would receive would be approximately that. The beauty of us purchasing this now is, sure, we're paying for it, but now we're 100% behind the meter with this solar array into the community center, which is continuing to offset our expenses. The other thing that's wonderful about this, I'm going to try not to get too far into the weeds, I'll be as brief as I possibly can. When you have a renewable energy source, in this case solar, along with that comes what are called SRECs, or solar renewable energy credits. We will now acquire those SRECs, which have value on the market for other entities that need to have a way to show that they are using renewables. That renewable energy may not be going to that entity, but they're now paying for those RECs, and that qualifies then to be someone who's showing we are operating in the decreased carbon world with decreased carbonization. And so there is added value for us, not only with just having energy behind the meter, feeding into the community center that we own. There's the SRECs, which we'll take advantage of, which, by the way, the 2.1 megawatt solar array that is currently owned by Kokosing Solar, that is also feeding a lot of our government accounts. We also were able to negotiate the retention of those SRECs for that solar array as well. So we're just continuing down the path of the mission that council put before me and my administration, and that is to reduce our carbon emissions by 50% by the year 2030. I think we're not only well on the way to achieving that goal, I think we've already surpassed that goal, and we may want to consider, council, rethinking that piece of legislation to drop that down to, at some point, maybe by 2040, being zero.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. It's very exciting. I'll just add that for those unfamiliar with this solar array, the carport, it is on the steel structure just to the east of the Athens Community Center. And one of the nice things about owning that entire system is that we own that steel, we own the whole installation. And so that's where we have our Athens Farmers Market, and there's a lot of ways to collaborate with using that space now that we will own, I should say, the entire installation. So it's very exciting. Any other questions from administration or the audience? Or Member McCary?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I would appreciate your clarification on the solar panels that we have that are offsetting the energy use of the wastewater treatment facility. It is my recollection that we are on the way to entirely offset the energy of the wastewater treatment plant. And I'm wondering, will these solar panels ever entirely offset the energy used by the community center?
So just to take a step backwards, the 2.1 megawatt solar array will not completely power the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay.
And the reason being is that we currently do not have what's referred to as a microgrid down there. A microgrid, like we do have at the water treatment plant, has a battery system that is feeding off the solar array by day, and at night it can feed back in, because at the during the nighttime hours, solar isn't being generated with the solar array. So, but to your point, a significant amount of the energy consumption is being deployed by the solar array for the wastewater treatment plant. The community center's hours are different, and so it will, you'll see a greater amount that is powering the community center when it is open and, you know, functionally open during the daytime hours. I can share with council this, is that the solar array, the new solar array, is at about 95% powering our seasonal swimming pool, which is also, it's an energy consumer. It's nowhere near what the wastewater treatment plant uses in terms of energy. But, so we're slowly getting there. The only way any government account could be 100% powered by renewable energies, again, is if you have a microgrid system that is helping to power that facility during the nighttime, the dark hours of the day.
Thank you for that clarification.
Absolutely.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, moving on to our next ordinance. Ordinance 97-24 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title V, Public Utilities, Chapter 5.07, Stormwater Regulations, Sections 5.07.14, Appeal of Notice of Violation, and 5.07.15, Enforcement Measures After Appeal, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Crowell. This was discussed by the City and Safety Services Committee at our last meeting. And as council members may recall, this was a very minor update to specifying a 30-day period for appealing notices of violations. So I will just read that section 5.07.14, appeal of notice of violation. Any person receiving a notice of violation may appeal the determination of the Service Safety Director. The notice of appeal must be received within 30 days from the date of the notice of violation. Hearing of the appeal before the appropriate authority or their designee shall take place within 15 days from the date of receipt of the notice of appeal. The decision of the municipal authority or their designee shall be final. Section 5.07.15, enforcement measures after the appeal. If the violation has not been corrected pursuant to the requirements set forth in the notice of violation, or in the event of an appeal within 30 days of the decision of the municipal authority upholding the decision of the authorized enforcement agency, the representatives of the authorized enforcement agency shall enter upon the subject private property and are authorized to take any and all measures necessary to abate the violation and or restore the property. It shall be unlawful for any owner, agent, or person in possession of any premises to refuse to allow the government agency or designated contractor to enter upon the premises for the purposes set forth above. Finally, Section 2, this ordinance shall be in effect and full force upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
Thank you, Member McCary. Any comments or questions on this ordinance? Elected officials, city administration, audience members? Thank you. Ordinance 97-24 has been read for the first time. Ordinance 98-24 is an ordinance approving the Athens Hocking Solid Waste Management Plan, introduced by Councilmember McCary on behalf of all members of council.
Thank you, President Krell. This is indeed a substantial piece of work and quite a lengthy document, previously reviewed and discussed by council members. I'll begin with the first whereas. Whereas the city of Athens in Athens County is located within the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District, and whereas the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District Policy Committee prepared and adopted a final draft of the Solid Waste Management Plan in accordance with ORC sections 3734.53, 3734.54, and 3734.55. And whereas the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District has provided a copy of the adopted Solid Waste Management Plan for ratification to each of the legislative authorities of the district. And whereas the city of Athens must decide whether it approves of said solid waste management plan within 90 days of receipt of the final plan, be it ordained by the council of the city of Athens, Athens City Council does hereby approve the Athens Hocking Solid Waste Management Plan adopted by the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District Board of Directors on September 4th, 2024. Section 2, the clerk of council is hereby directed to forward a certified copy of this ordinance to the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District. Section 3, This council finds and determines that all formal actions of council concerning and relating to the passage of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22. Section 4, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law upon its passage and approval by the mayor. I'm sure there's a lot of appreciation for the hard work that went into this plan and how it complements our existing sustainability goals.
Yes, thank you, Member McCary. Any comments or questions on this ordinance? City administration, elected officials, audience members? Okay, thank you. Ordinance 98-24 has been read for the first time. The next two ordinances are in reference to the Committee of the Whole item this evening on the Union Street closure. Ordinance 99-24 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 15-24, authorizing the Service Safety Director to close streets in the uptown area for special events during the 2024 calendar year, and to change requested dates or cancel events as necessary, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
Mr. President, I would move that the council suspend the rules this evening in regards to 99-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Are there any comments on the suspension of the rules?
Again, with this event, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Member Swank?
Again, with this event coming up a week from Saturday, suspension of the rules will be necessary to make it come to fruition.
Thank you. Are all those in favor of suspending the rules for 99-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended, Member Swank.
We discussed in great detail and heard from the organizer of the event earlier on in the Committee of the Whole. I would move that council pass 99-24.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second for approval of 99-24. Any comments or questions? City administration?
I have a question on procedure.
Yes, please.
Is this the type of ordinance that doesn't require an emergency clause to take
No, I
effect
was
immediately?
looking at that.
I'm sorry?
And I do believe it does need an emergency clause, Clerk Walker. I just noticed that.
To be on the safe side.
Yes, I think it probably does, and when I looked at that. So at this point, we had a motion to suspend the rules and a motion to adopt. However, at this point, I think that we're going to have to go back and have a motion to amend. So, and start the process over.
So would the motion to approve, council member like to remove their,
Yeah, I'd like to get this in sequence.
okay,
Thank you. So the motion
the
to adopt was by Member Swank, Clodfelter was the second. So you withdraw that? Okay. And then going back up, we already had a motion to suspend the rules. And I appreciate Member Reisner pointing it out. It did cross my mind at the moment. And
Well, after you've been here as long as I have
well,
this evening.
and I think just to be, as Clerk Walker said, just to make sure. So we did have a motion by Member Swank and a second by Member Clodfelder, and it was approved on a motion to suspend. I think we're going to have to do something about that. So not quite sure how we're going to handle that. I don't even know if that's ever happened before, do you think?
can we withdraw that
All
one
right,
and then go
we'll
back to the
withdraw that.
beginning?
All right, so
Okay.
Member Swank and Member Clodfelter, you'll withdraw those
Yes.
motions?
Yes.
All right, so that would nullify the approval. So now we can have the motion to.
Member Reisner, would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we amend this 99-24 and insert an emergency clause.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend 99-24 by inserting an emergency clause. Is there any questions or comments on this amendment? City administration, elected officials, audience members. All those in favor of amending 99-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
now we need the motion to suspend.
9924 has been amended, Member Swank.
I would move that council suspend the rules on 9924.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Councilmember Swank, the rules have been suspended.
Mr. President, I would move that council pass 9924 as amended.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second to approve 99-24 as amended. Any comments or questions? The administration, yes, Mayor?
Just a comment, I think this is something that's worthy of mentioning to everyone, because the comment did come up earlier this evening, is the last part of the title in this, which basically states, "and to change requested dates and/or to cancel an event." I bring that up because there was several occasions over this past summer to where events had to be changed in terms of their dates. So it's something that does happen, but when it does occur, the Service Safety Director, Deputy Service Safety Director do have the authority to move that date without coming back to council to talk about the dates in which we're moving it to. It's written in the title.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other additional comments or questions? Audience members, please.
I would just like to add that,
Sorry to be formal, just state your name again, and that's all right.
Bryant, here I am, just commenting on the mayor's comment about the city safety director being able to change or cancel events as necessary. And I would just like to ask if that interpretation of the law also includes to add extra dates without permission of council.
Can you clarify what you think is the difference between adding a date and changing a date?
Right, so there are a certain amount of dates that all of you approved. And then if there were extra dates that were not approved, is that the changing of a date or is that an addition? Or are they the same thing?
Law Director, do you have a legal opinion on?
No, not at this time. I don't know the details.
Fine.
So I would
Well-
eventually need to have more detail.
Well, more details would be that after the first unapproved road closure on 6/8, I spoke with Andrew Cheeky about it, and he said that he had the authority to cancel or change requested dates. And I said, oh, so that means you can just add dates? Because I was wondering which date he had changed to make room for that road closure, and he hadn't changed one, he had just added it. And then he added another one on July 18th, and then he added a third in September. So I'm just trying to be clear as to whether or not the city safety director has supreme authority to add dates, or if change and cancel means just that.
Thank you very much for your comments. We can research this and
Yeah,
respond
I
accordingly.
appreciate the clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any other audience members? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve 99-24. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion has carried and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 100-24 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 16-24, suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code Chapter 11.04 vending, peddling, and soliciting to allow vending in designated event areas.
That will
intro-
also need an emergency.
Yes, introduced by Mr. Swank.
Mr. Reiser, would you like to offer an amendment to this?
If they insist. Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend ordinance 100-24 to insert an emergency clause at the end.
I think you insisted.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second to amend 100-24. Are there any comments or questions on the amendment? City administration, elected officials, audience members? All those in favor of amending 100-24 by inserting the emergency clause signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is amended. Member Swank.
Mr. President, I would move that council suspend 100-24. Suspend the rules for, suspend the rules for ordinance 100-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, to suspend the rules for 100-24. Any comments or questions on the suspension? City administration, elected officials, audience members, all those in favor of suspending the rules for 100-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Member Swank.
Mr. President, I would move that council pass the 100th ordinance that we've passed this year, 100-24.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve 100-24. Are there any comments or questions on this ordinance? City administration, elected officials, or audience members? Okay, all those in favor of approving 100-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion has carried and the ordinance is approved. We now move on to a resolution for third reading. Resolution 06-24 is a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 06-24.
Second.
We've discussed this in committee, and we've read it twice. Just to refresh your memory, we have to do this every year. As you know, the city of Athens does not have a property tax. However, we do receive funds from the county, which does have a property tax, in order to do the repairs and maintenance of those streets, bridges, ditches, and so on that exist within Athens Township and Canaan Township, since the city pretty much occupies all of Athens Township and a little bit of Canaan. We are responsible for their upkeep, and this offsets our costs. And it's been approved by the county auditor and is going through all the various red tape. So if we want our money, this is what we have to do.
Thank you, Member Reisner. We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 06-24. Are there any comments or questions from council? City officials, elected officials, city administration, audience members? Seeing none. Okay, thank you. And council, you will all need to sign the official document before you leave this evening, so be sure to do that. All those in favor of approving ordinance 06-24, excuse me, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion is carried and the resolution is approved. We now move on to announcements and other business. Would anyone like to remove from the table the BZA appointments? Member Swank.
Since I moved to table it, I will move this evening that we remove from the table reappointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to remove from the table the reappointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Are there any comments or questions on this motion? City administration, elected officials, audience members. Mayor?
I do have one question. The reason for it being tabled was that there were a significant number of individuals who are concerned about one of my reappointments. So I guess my question to council or to whomever was that satisfactorily resolved over my appointment's tenure on the Board of Zoning Appeals, because these are both reappointments, assuming that there wasn't anything egregious that occurred while serving in that capacity as a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I think that discussion would come when this is referred back to committee.
At this point, there's a motion and a second to remove from the table.
Thank you. All those in favor of removing this item from the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. the issue is removed from the table. Member Swank, go ahead.
Mr. President, per our rules and after consultation with the law director, I would move that we refer this matter to committee. We refer this matter to committee.
Member Swank, would that be the committee of the whole?
I think last time it was a committee of the whole, so, it wasn't the committee of the whole. We just discussed it as a whole. But I think that would be the appropriate place, wouldn't you?
I do.
Okay, I would move that we refer this to the committee of the whole.
Seconded?
We have a motion and a second to refer the reappointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals to the committee of the whole. Any comments or questions on this motion? Anything to add? Audience? All those in favor of sending this to the committee of the whole signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The matter has been referred back to committee. Mr. Swank. Okay, we are now, let's see. Is there a motion regarding the council rules and our edits to the gendered language that was present in those rules?
I'll move.
Thank you.
Is that on the agenda?
Is that on the agenda?
It's on the agenda.
Oh, done, okay. I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the council rules, which simply have been edited. We discussed in committee edits to the rules. We reduced, after the discussion, the changes to the current document just to the gendered language, removing the male or feminine pronouns and replacing them with their. Those are the only changes currently under consideration for the council rules. So we have a motion and a second to approve these rules. Are there any additional comments or questions from council, from city administration, from elected officials, or from the audience? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. The council rules as edited are approved. We now have the opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda. And I know that we have some people from indivisible Appalachian, Ohio, who may wish to speak this evening. So you may just approach the podium and give us your name and your address and whether you represent a group, and you may have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Chris Miles, pronouns they, them. I'm representing Indivisible Appalachian, Ohio today. I live at 33 North McKinley in Ward 4. I'm a third-year student and member of Indivisible Appalachian, Ohio. I grew up in Southeast Ohio, and I feel like I'm watching towns like Athens being slowly scrapped for parts. Land is being bought up, local businesses are closing, and young people like me are having to choose between a living wage and staying in our hometowns. Although I plan to stay, I fear that I won't be able to unless voters like us can hold politicians accountable to fulfilling their promises for a brighter future and have our voices heard above those of out-of-touch political party bosses. I'm joined by a group of my neighbors today to call on this council to pass a resolution that declares the stake the people of Athens have in a fair and transparent redistricting process and set the record straight about Issue 1's provisions. Here's the proposed resolution in full. Whereas, in a democracy, every vote must count the same, making sure all voters, no matter who they are or what their political views may be, have equal representation. Whereas, the Athens City Council opposes creating legislative district maps in Ohio that put political parties' interests ahead of those of voters. Whereas, Ohio's current redistricting process has repeatedly created district maps without direct citizen input, and these maps have been ruled unconstitutional several times because of extreme party bias. Whereas, concerns have been raised by citizens that current maps unfairly reduce the voting power of working-class voters of color by splitting up their communities and cities, making it harder for them to elect representatives who truly represent their interests. And whereas citizens have expressed concerns that the current maps reduce competition for state legislative seats, and reducing competition makes it harder for voters in small towns like Athens to replace politicians they believe prioritize developers, corporations, and campaign donors over working-class voters. Whereas several bipartisan bills that address critical issues, such as funding public schools, preventing utility shutoffs, expanding internet access, and supporting renters and low-income homeowners, have stalled in state legislatures created by the current redistricting process. Whereas the city of Athens has a duty to stand up for fair representation and set an example by condemning the unfair process for drawing legislative districts that take away power from voters across Ohio. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Athens, State of Ohio, Section 1, the Athens City Council urges state leaders and local governments across Ohio to support creating a citizen-led, transparent commission to draw legislative districts. This commission should not include current or former politicians or paid lobbyists to ensure it stays fair. Section 2. The Athens City Council asks state leaders to actively fight against misinformation about Issue 1 and give clear and accurate information to the public about its provisions. My neighbors and I are calling upon you to pass this resolution as quickly as possible to set the record straight about Issue 1's provisions and give voice to the stake that the people of Athens have in a transparent and fair redistricting process. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, were you able to sign in? Oh, yes. Okay, great. Would anyone else like to speak this evening? Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. President?
Yes,
Question of order, please.
please.
If the council were to consider what we just heard, and in view of the fact that the election is less than a month away, if I'm not mistaken, we would need to consider this in committee next week. And then would this be a one reading resolution? We could do it on the 21st. And therefore, if the council deemed it appropriate, have it in place roughly 16 days before the election so that it would have some meat to it. Otherwise, we don't. We're looking at passing this potentially, or voting on it, I shall say. Don't want to be presumptuous. Voting on it the night before the election, and I think that's a little too late.
Thank you, Member Swank. Can you provide the text to council?
Absolutely. Yep. And we're sorry we didn't send it in advance. We were still getting it.
That's okay. Thank you for being here. Yes, Member McCary.
Thank you, President Crowell. An additional procedural question. If this were to come before, for example, the Committee of the Whole next week, would we need an individual to introduce it, a member of council to somehow sponsor it, or even though it would be from the Committee of the Whole, to get it on the agenda?
I think it can get on the agenda as an item for the committee of the whole.
Just present it to the president.
Well, they're usually presented by all council members or a single.
So this, I just wanted to.
This would be all the committee of whole.
Yes, so that the language at the top of the resolution would say introduced by the Committee of the Whole, but I just wanted to clarify whether we needed, if this conversation that we're having right now is sufficient to get it on the agenda for the Committee of the Whole, or if someone had to say, I support this being on the committee, the agenda.
I can say that I can put it on the agenda, and I will. How about that?
So there.
Good point. Good clarification. Okay. Any other, last chance for citizens to speak? Okay, thank you so much for being here tonight. We have the need this evening to go into executive session. Before we do that, how much time do we usually? So I have 8:19, we'll call it 8:20. When the clock goes to 8:30, we will have to have the room cleared. So I know we have students here tonight that would like to ask some questions. We'll give you 10 minutes to ask those questions, absolutely. And then we will start the executive committee. Should we first do the roll call, or should we do that after they leave?
Well, just to also clarify that we will open the door again.
Okay.
We need to do that.
Okay, so first I need a motion to go into executive session with the reason being pending litigation.
Of two matters of pending litigation.
I would like to move that we enter executive session for the purpose of discussing two pending litigation matters.
And who will be there?
With all members of council, as well as the council clerk, law director, auditor, treasurer, and mayor.
Okay,
Seconded by Jessica Thomas.
seconded by Ms. Thomas. And then we need a roll call vote. Member Reisner?
Aye.
Member Wood? Member Swank?
Aye.
Member McCary?
Aye.
Member Clodfelter? Member Thomas?
Aye.
Okay, we will go into executive session at 8:30, so we are welcome, we're open for business.